Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Historia Politica Pública. This is the second part of the series about the years and years review. This episode that was released in 2019, and it tells the story of a British family and how the years are passing by until we are facing a kind of dystopian future, which it doesn't seem so unlikely considering the things that have been happening. In the first episode, I spoke about an overall view of the TV show, also the themes that are emphasized in the show, such as the refugees treatment, also the energetic crisis, some of the political alignments of the TV show, and a kind of review of the main characters. Here I would like to start to speak about Vivian Rook, which is the character performed brilliantly by Emma Thompson, and which is the leader of a new political party in the UK, which is called the Four Star Party. Obviously, Vivian Rook and the Four Star Party is a kind of mix between Donald Trump and Beppe Grillo, which was the leader of the Five Star movement in Italy, and who reached the prime minister in Italy. I think it was in 2018, in a coalition with the far right by Matteo Salvini. Obviously, Emma Thompson does a great performance, and if we analyze her blonde hair in the most Trumpian style, the gestures that she does, the populist discourses, it is clear a mix between those people, because Beppe Grillo, he was a comedian, he was a blogger, which in his blog, I think back in 2016, he was presenting himself as the politician. He was giving some easy solutions to big problems, and at the end, he was elected as the prime minister of Italy. So, the strambotic gestures that we see of Vivian Rook during the TV show, she goes to this kind of humoristic programs, she participates in different acts, and she's always like being very dramatic, the way that she talks. There is one conference which is very interesting, in which she says something which doesn't make sense, like trying to impose on Europe sanctions on the British sports, which is impossible to do that. You can do that on the imports that you do in Europe, but the Minister of the Labour Party, the candidate, he asked Vivian Rook something like, okay, how can you are going to put sanction on our sports in Europe? So it is clear that Vivian Rook didn't think really well about that, but she's very clever and she gives the turnaround at a time. And even though Vivian Rook in the first election that she presented herself reached only 4 deputies, I think, or no, sorry, not 4, it is more, it's 15 deputies, and the Conservative Party win the election, she will make a difference, because she can choose if ally herself with the Labour or with the Conservative Party. But basically, as I mentioned in the first episode, the TV show warns against voting about funny people. It is interesting because I think the funny people, it reminds us to Boris Johnson, because the TV show was released in 2019 when Boris Johnson was running as the candidate of the Conservative Party. Well, in fact, he had become Prime Minister after Theresa May's resignation back in 2018, if I am not wrong. So he had been 1 year Prime Minister by the decree, but obviously the elections was in November 2019, and he did something very anti-democratic in order to not extend the Brexit issue, which was the main one in 2019. He decided to not go to Parliament before summertime. He tried to extend the period because he knew that in August the Parliament on Britain is closed, and there was a huge debate about that, about if what Johnson was doing was kind of semi-authoritarian measure. So the idea is that, yeah, the TV show warns against voting with funny people. Boris Johnson has always been portrayed by the conservative mainstream media as a kind of funny guy, person of the people, very straightforward. And obviously Boris Johnson now, he has been demonized by both left and right-wing media because his performance during the pandemic, the fact that he did not respect the rules during the COVID lockdown, something that many people didn't do actually, by the way. Don't want to defend Boris Johnson in that sense because obviously he needs to show himself as an example of the country, but at the same time say that blaming him just for not obeying the laws during the lockdown, I don't think it was his bigger mistake because he obviously he has taken some measures against the economy. He didn't give support enough for the people during the lockdown. The Conservative Party has been doing cuts in the NHS for a decade, not just Johnson, but also Theresa May or David Cameron. So it was more an endemic bad situation done by the Conservative Party rather than by just some things done by Johnson. But obviously the mainstream media, which support the Tories, knew that they needed to get rid of Boris Johnson as they got rid by Theresa May before, in order to put a new person. So yeah, and after we know the story, how Liz Truss only lasts 40 days, becoming the shortest ever prime minister in the history of Great Britain, and now we have Rishi Sunak in charge. But going back to the show, yes, I think that is a war against voting to funny comedian people. And actually, it is interesting how Zelensky, the Prime Minister of Ukraine, was a comedian before becoming the President of Ukraine back in 2019, the year which the show was released. And I don't really know if that was also a point to Zelensky, because if we consider that Victor, the partner of Daniel, is also from Ukraine and is a refugee, I don't know if they wanted to do this kind of relation. Obviously now it seems kind of bizarre because Zelensky is a person which is known across the world after the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, and he's traveling among different parliaments in the whole world. And at the time he wasn't not that known, but perhaps it's just a curious day to note. Going back to Emma Thompson and her master performance as Vivian Rook, I would like to point other characters that for me are really interesting in the TV. So we have Celeste. Celeste is the wife of one of the brothers of Stephen. She's a strong woman, is the figure of an empowerment, but at the same time she's suffering a lot because Stephen is being not nice with her. I don't want to spoil what is happening, but Celeste is this person who doesn't have a good relation with Muriel, which is the grandmother of the four brothers, but still she takes care of the two children, which both of them are very interesting, especially Bethany, which in the last 2 episodes of the TV show becomes one of the most important characters in the show. But Celeste, I believe it is one of the best actors and actresses in the show. Also, you have Daniel. Daniel is the partner of Victor, and I think his performance is also brilliantly done. He is this kind of person who, no matter what, he will be willing to sacrifice everything for his love, which is Victor. And you see how the dichotomy between Victor and Daniel, two people who are born in different areas in Europe. Daniel is from the UK, Victor is from Ukraine, and just this makes a huge difference for their life. Daniel can live safely in the UK, whereas Victor has to struggle a lot to go there after, as I mentioned in the earlier episode, he can not live in Europe anymore apart from Spain, which is at that time the most open society in the whole Europe. And the other character that I like, this is my favorite character, is Edith. Edith is one of the sisters. There are Edith, Rosie, Celeste, Stephen and Daniel. And I think it's very interesting character because she's an epitome of the modern activist in the world. He has been a long life activist, always committed to every cause. She's a big anarchist. She has been struggling, supporting the refugees, the feminist movement, supporting the LGBTQ plus society, the community. Also is anti-racist, and most of all, he's committed with the ecological movement to diminish the climate change in the world. So he's basically sacrificing her life to change the system and create a better world. Because he has been traveling across the planet for many years to join different protests in parts of the world. She suffers radiation for an explosion in the first episode. I think the explosion, it is near the Pacific. I don't remember exactly what was the cause, but I think she was protesting against the contamination of the environment by different companies. So because she's near the explosion, she's told that she's going to live no more than a decade after that, and this is 2019. But instead surrendering to her fate, she kept doing acts of civil disobedience, such as stealing information for a big company which was destroying the environment, and this will be fundamental for the development of the series. Her role as an active subject will lead to her to perform a decisive role, but as she perfectly expresses, she says, quote, "We are just a common family." This is, I think, very illustrative of her thought, because even though she does a lot of activities that we may consider as heroic, because she's sacrificing her well-being in order to pursue a common good, she never emphasized her role as an individual, but rather she points of the importance of the community all the time. And in fact, all the activities that she does regarding civil disobedience is always through the help of a huge network of people who help her to get in contact with Victor when she's in a camp, is imprisoned in the detention center and later in the camp. Also, the role that she gets in order to steal information from the big company and so on. So she emphasized the importance of engaging with the community in order to establish a better society, or at least to go in the path to it, mentioning that, okay, we are, as individuals, we are fundamental because we have the power to change things, but it is only with the power of a group of people that we can really fulfill our interest. So, instead rejoicing in herself, he's all the time praising the mutual aid and common solidarity of thousands of people. Precisely, she has a net of many collaborators, as I mentioned, who help her to perform the actions that make a difference in the decade of the 2020s. I told earlier that she's a vegan anarchist, and Edith, I believe, epitomizes the figure of a person wanting to save the world through international collaboration. In one of her weakest moments in the TV show, she blames herself for putting many of these ideas on Daniel's head. I think this is a reference to Plato's myth of the cave. Leaving the shadow realm and face the outside world will blind you and eventually make you realize many things that are sometimes hard to understand. Plato, as you remember in the myth, he tells the story of a person who is like living among shadows, and after she leaves the cave, and eventually the person realizes how the real world is that outside the cave. And when this person came back to the cave, he cannot believe anymore that the shadows are real, and when he tells the people living in the cave that the outside world is real, these people want to kill him because the reality that he's portraying is evil, is nasty, and is a lie, according to the people living in the shadow. This is a good metaphor that we can also see in The Matrix, one of the, I think, best movies relating science fiction and both philosophy. So this is the ideas that Edith put on Daniel's head, which make him realize how unfair is the world and force him to live his comfortable life as a kind of white male working for the government. I mean, although he's homosexual and obviously he's not as privileged as the heterosexual community, but still these ideas that Edith shared with Daniel make him realize many things in the world, and he gets involved in the different movement to change it. Obviously, it's difficult to face the truth. Sometimes one has the temptation to go back to the cave in the allegory of Plato's, yet it is impossible, but most important, it won't help anybody. And just to finish this episode, I will say that the speech of the grandmother is one of the key points of the show. It's a statement of more than 2 minutes in which she points to the individual responsibility of everybody and why society has been like undermining itself just because people has not been willing to make a change. She points to the examples of the automatic self-service machines in the different supermarkets, how the people who were working there have lost their jobs, and now, yes, there are more unemployed people, and the society is becoming more automatized. This is also epitomized by Celeste, who is keep losing jobs because she's being substituted as a machine, as she says sometimes in the show. I think if we look around us, this is clear that is happening in different places. Also now, for example, in the airports, you can do the self-service for the check-in and the facturation of the luggage. In other parts, you see how, because the machines are doing the jobs being done by people before, some workers are becoming redundant. Also, the grandmother Muriel emphasized how we have been apathetic. We have been happy going with the flow of the society without wanting to change that much. It's interesting because some people, they are arguing against her in the debate, but significantly, Edith is one of the few that just listen, because I believe she realized that the thing that Muriel is telling is totally the truth of the life. This discourse is given in the 6th episode, and I think it's very illustrative of all that is happening in the TV show. But the important thing of this discourse, it is not just a kind of last verdict of what has happened in society and how we are kind of demonized and we are sentenced for a future which cannot be changed. But rather, one of the characters of the TV show, which is Rosie, one of the sisters, she really grasped the meaning of the discourse of her grandmother Muriel, and at the end she does something which is clearly influenced by her. This is when she becomes an active subject, willing to change the future of the society of Britain, and how this is something that Edith has been doing for many decades, but obviously her sister, which was more apathetic towards the change, now wants to make a real difference in the world, and it is significant that she makes her daughter be part of this change. Also, the TV show talks about transhumanism, which is this ideology that speaks how far are we to get more engaged with the technology. For example, here in the episode they speak about the idea of putting your phone inside your skin, but nowadays there are some philosophers who argue that we are already transhumans because we are using the phone every day, looking through WhatsApp, communicating with people, and even though the phone is not actually under our skin, those instruments are part of ourselves. This is a very interesting debate. I think in the TV show they show it quite well, and even in one of the last moments of the TV show, it touched this philosophical idea of what is consciousness. Do we have consciousness? Is it possible to replicate a human body, a human consciousness with the data of this person, with the information, and keep that person alive even in the other realm, in the realm of technology? It is very, very good, because also Edith make a great statement about that she is not just data, she is not just a bunch of information, a bunch of memories, but also love. The love that she experienced among her family, among her loved ones, and that won't ever be possible to replicate in a machine. Obviously, this is kind of also a reference, I think, to Blade Runner, the replicants, those people who are very similar to humans, but they do not have consciousness. apparently. But the idea of Blade Runner is how can you difference a replicant to a real human, and they have this test of empathy to show that the replicants do not have empathy, but this doesn't work always. So I think that part of Years and Years have the influence of the great book of Philip K. Dick, which is called Do Ships Dream with no, sorry, I am saying that book bad. Let me check. Do Ship Dream with yes, the name is Do Android Dream of Electric Ship. That novel was adapted to the cinema and is the famously known Blade Runner. So yes, I think I will finish here my analysis of Years and Years, because I could speak much more, but that will mean to go through spoilers, and I encourage all of you to watch this TV show. It's just 6 episodes, and they touch, as I mentioned, very different aspects such as the human relation, refugees, the political sides, a semi-authoritarian regime, how can it get more dictatorial along the years in a subtle way. This is similar to the Handmaid's Tale. Also, the different prediction that they do across the world. They nail the prediction about the war with in Ukraine, the blackouts, the electricity prices due to the crisis, the blaming on Russia that they do all the time, the powerful China that is getting, also the Roe and Wade legislation which was overturned in the USA. And there are other. I forgot to say, they mentioned there is the pandemic, which is, I think, the monkey flu in 2028, something like that. And it's interesting because Muriel become kind of concerned about the spreading the disease, and we can extrapolate that to the COVID-19 of 2020. The TV show, as I mentioned, was released 1 year early, so they did not have any idea about what will happen. And there are other predictions that they have been doing, such as European far right getting into Europe, such as in France, in Italy, and many other countries. And as I mentioned in the first episode, the only safe haven from far right party is the Spanish socialist, socialist Spain as they call it. Although there is a Spanish revolution later on, in which the far left take the power of the country. So yeah, it's very interesting to see, knowing what is happening now in society. Also, the performances are really good. Again, my favorites performances are Muriel, the grandmother, Celeste, the wife of Steven. Steven is also very good, although I hate the character, but he does brilliantly. Edith is also great, and one of the characters that evolve more perhaps is the doctor, Bethany. Although it's also Rosie also changed a lot, because she started to vote for Vivian Rook as a kind of joke. Just to finish the episode, one of my favorite scenes is when they have to vote for the elections, and it's interesting how every brother and sister vote for something different. Like Daniel votes for the Conservative Party, and you will say, okay, this is strange because he's gay, and he's like a kind of progressive guy supporting his partner Victor. He's a refugee, right? But he votes Conservative Party, whereas Stephen, which is this kind of guy which is a bit xenophobic, is racist, so on. Not openly so, but it underfolds his character on the TV show. He votes Labour Party. He's the kind of let's say stereotype of labor guy of the 1960s, which was pro working class, but at the same time it was a bit misogynist, kind of wanting for this idea for the white class people who vote for Brexit in mass in 2016, because most of them, they don't want immigration, although they were involved in the Labour Party in 1960s in the working class movement. Then you have Rosie, which votes for Vivian Rook just because for her it's funny. Also, Celeste votes for the Green Party, if I am not wrong. I think Celeste votes for the Green Party, but I am not sure now that I am saying that. But Edith certainly vote for no, Edith doesn't vote because she's an anarchist, and anarchists have this idea that all state is wrong, so she put a huge cross in the paper. But at the same time, I like her because she also, I mean, I support her ideas. I don't support the fact that we don't have to vote. I think we should vote, yeah, at least for the better solution, until we can reach a better consensus among the society. But I like because she goes with her sister Rosie to see a conference of Vivian Rook, and I think she does that because she wants to learn, as a good anarchist will do, like trying to learn about everything, reading books, but also engaging in community. I think she illustrates perfectly well the idea of anarchism. I will finish here. It has been longer than usual, but I think this TV show is worthy to see. So if you have any doubt, any question, any comment, anything that I have mentioned in this episode about years and years, please comment here in the channel. Give a like if you wish, and yes, I will keep doing other episodes perhaps about other TV shows that I like, but let's see what will go in the future.